I stood in the center of my own living room, a space that was supposed to be my sanctuary after 30 years of active duty and 3 major deployments, and I realized that the man I had become to survive the greatest wars known to man was now the biggest threat to the only life I had left. I looked at the divorce papers sitting on the coffee table next to a framed photo of my unit in the desert, and I had to ask myself, was I wrong for bringing the battlefield home with me, or was it inevitable that a man who has seen what I've seen would eventually burn down everything he ever loved? Tell me if you would have done the same thing, or if I'm just a ghost who forgot how to live among the living. My name is Elias, and for most of my adult life, I was a soldier first and a human being second. I enlisted when I was 18, driven by a sense of duty that felt as solid as the ground beneath my feet, and I quickly rose through the ranks because I had a knack for staying calm when the world was literally exploding around me. I survived the kind of conflicts that make history books, the kind of wars where the sand gets into your soul and the sound of gunfire becomes the only heartbeat you recognize. I saw things that I don't talk about, things that I thought I had buried under layers of medals and military discipline. But the truth is that the war never really stays where you leave it. When I finally retired and came home for good, I thought the hard part was over. I thought I could just step back into my role as a husband to Sarah and a father to my 2 kids, Leo and Mia, as if I had just been away on a long business trip. But the transition wasn't like flipping a switch. It was like trying to fit a jagged piece of shrapnel into a puzzle made of silk. Sarah had been my rock for 25 years, the woman who waded through every deployment and kept the house running while I was halfway across the world. But the man who came back this last time wasn't the man she married. I was hyper, vigilant, constantly scanning the perimeter of our suburban backyard for threats that weren't there. I couldn't handle the noise of the vacuum cleaner or the sudden sound of a car back firing without my heart rate spiking and my hand reaching for a sidearm that wasn't on my hip anymore. I became cold, distant, and obsessed with order, treating my family like a platoon that needed to be drilled rather than a group of people who just wanted to love me. I started implementing schedules for everything, demanding that the house be kept in a state of combat readiness. And I would lose my temper over the smallest things, like a dish left in the sink or a door left unlocked. I didn't see it as being difficult. I saw it as protecting them. In my mind, the world was a dangerous place, and if they weren't prepared, something terrible would happen. But the more I tried to protect them, the more I pushed them away. Leo, who was 17 and just trying to find his own way, started avoiding me entirely, and Mia, my sweet 12-year-old, began to look at me with fear instead of the adoration I remembered. Sarah tried to reach me, she really did. She begged me to go to therapy, to talk to someone at the VA, to just open up to her about what was going on in my head. But I couldn't do it. To me, talking about it felt like losing, like admitting that the wars I had won had actually defeated me. I stayed silent, retreating into a shell of stoicism that felt like armor, but was actually a cage. The tension in the house grew until it was thick enough to choke on, and every dinner was a minefield of unspoken words and averted eyes. I started drinking more, hoping the bourbon would drown out the ghosts, but they just learned how to swim. I would stay up until 4 in the morning, sitting in the dark with a baseball bat, watching the street through the blinds, convinced that the shadows were moving. I was fighting a war that had ended years ago, and I was losing the one that mattered most. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening when I found a cigarette butt on the porch. Leo had started smoking, a small rebellion against my iron-fisted rule, and when I saw it, I snapped. I didn't just yell. I went into a full, full-blown tactical breakdown, screaming about discipline and respect as if he were a recruit who had compromised our position. I saw the look of pure terror on Sarah's face as she stepped between us, and for the first time I realized that I was the monster they were afraid of. She didn't say a word that night, but the next morning the papers were on the table. She told me she loved me, but she couldn't watch me destroy myself and the kids anymore. She said she was taking them to her mother's, and that I needed to decide if I wanted to be a soldier or a father, because I couldn't be both in that house. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice that felt harder than any command I'd ever given in the field. Before I tell you what happened next and how I tried to win back my family, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have walked away to protect them from yourself, or would you have fought to change even if you didn't know how? I sat in that empty, silent house for 3 days, the silence louder than any explosion I'd ever heard. I looked at the walls I had turned into a fortress and realized I was the only prisoner inside. I finally picked up the phone and called a buddy of mine from my second tour, a guy named Miller who I knew had struggled with the same demons. He didn't sugarcoat it. He told me I was being a coward by hiding behind my trauma, and that the hardest mission I'd ever face was the walk into a therapist's office. It took every ounce of courage I had, more than it took to jump out of planes or clear buildings in a war zone, but I went. I started the long, painful process of deconstructing the soldier to find the man underneath. I had to learn how to breathe again, how to exist in a world where I wasn't being hunted, and how to apologize without making excuses. I reached out to Sarah, not to beg her to come back, but to show her I was doing the work. It took months of supervised visits, uncomfortable conversations, and tears I hadn't let fall in decades. I had to face the reality that while I had survived the wars abroad, I had almost lost the war at home because I was fighting the wrong enemy. I eventually convinced Sarah and the kids to come to a family session, where I finally told them about the things I'd seen, not as a way to justify my behavior, but to explain the echoes they were hearing. Slowly, the walls I'd built started to crumble. I learned that true strength wasn't in being untouchable, but in being vulnerable enough to let my family see my scars. We aren't back to where we were before I left, and maybe we never will be, but we're building something new, something grounded in the truth rather than the trauma. I traded my tactical gear for a garden, and while I still check the locks twice at night, I do it with a sense of peace rather than panic. I survived the greatest wars known to man, but I only truly started living when I stopped fighting everyone who loved me. This journey taught me that you can't win a war at home by using the tactics of the battlefield. You win it by laying down your arms and opening your heart. If you've ever felt like you're fighting a battle no one else can see, or if you've had to rebuild a relationship from the ashes, know that it's never too late to change the ending of your story. Like this video if you were on my side and believe in second chances, and make sure to subscribe for more stories like this one that dive deep into the messy reality of being human. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I really want to hear your perspective on whether a person can truly ever leave the war behind. I'll see you all in the next story.